不行啊，我。
プリズムパワーメイクアップカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo and Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, May 15th, 2022, we'll be shoujo and telling about the series The Story of Saiunkoku. The art is by Kairi Yura, and the story is by Sai Yukino. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by Dee, creator of the Josei Next Door blog and a writer at Anime Feminist. Hello, Dee.
Hello, Ashley. It's very exciting to be here.
Oh my gosh, I know. I've been the slow one on this. Everybody's like, why is Dee not been on yet? And I'm like, that's a great question.
People have been
I'm bad.
asking. I feel famous now. I'm so glad you said that. That's very exciting. I just assumed I wasn't very good at podcasting. So,
no, I think the opposite is true from what I've heard of you.
Ooh, this is exciting then. Thank you. Now I've got an ego boost to start the show.
Yes, that's right. Is there anything else that I missed that you want to say about yourself?
I think you covered the basics. Josei Next Door. I work at Anime Feminist. I'm one of the managing editors, so, big head honcho type, sort of.
Yes.
You can hang out with me on Twitter at Josei Next Door. So if you would like to, I'm mostly just posting bad jokes and yelling about Pokemon. But if that sounds fun for you, then you should head on over there. It'll be great.
I mean, my partner loves Pokemon, so he just wants to hear that all day.
Excellent.
All right, so yeah, we're going to talk about the story of Saiunkoku. This beginning section will be an attempt at being spoiler-free. It's kind of hard to talk about some things without spoiling anything, but we'll do our best for anybody who has not read or watched the anime, I guess. So Dee, would you like to give a plot synopsis?
Sure, I can do that. Okay, so the story of Saiunkoku, as the name suggests, takes place in the land of Saiunkoku, which is a fantastical version of dynastic China. They never really specify because it's a fantasy series, but it's like probably around 1000 AD, like probably in the Song Dynasty is kind of the vibe I get from it. The story follows Shurei, a young woman from a well-to-do but poor family who has always wanted to be a public official, but can't because women aren't allowed to take the civil service exams. In the early going of the story, she is approached by a high-ranking official, Lord Sa, who gives her the task of turning the nation's new emperor into a responsible leader. The job pays really well, so she accepts because she needs to get some work done on the house and maybe have rice for dinner. And so she enters the emperor's inner court, officially as a consort, but unofficially as like sort of his political tutor. So Shurei and Emperor Ryuki meet, and the story sort of spirals out from there as Shurei learns about Ryuki and the politics of the court and sort of her place within it. And it's, again, like you said, it's hard to talk about without spoiling too much because the story really does, I think, build on itself in a very gradual but like very natural and well-told way. But just kind of for folks at home, Shurei does not remain a consort for very long. That's sort of the entry point of the story. The overall story is much more focused on her dream of becoming a civil servant and like what needs to happen to make that happen. So it's more about her career goals, while she's hanging out with a lot of very pretty boys and thwarting some political schemes along the way. Naturally, it's a shoujo.
Naturally, duh. Yeah, I was like, it definitely does the shoujo thing where it has an initial premise, and then after 2 volumes, that premise is not necessarily the focus anymore, and you're like, okay, we're still here for the ride.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from because it is adapted from light novels. I think that you can very clearly feel the arcs in the manga where like maybe the end of a volume and then you get a different story. And so the first volume really does sort of feel like set up for what the main story is, which is, Shurei trying to realize her dream of like, breaking the old glass ceiling and joining the court. So
also the explanation that she just wants to buy some rice and fix up her house. I'm like, relatable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Shurei is a very relatable protagonist. She's one of the reasons I love this story so much.
Yeah, so I wanted to get a clear sense of like what level of familiarity you had with this series. Is this like the 50 millionth time you read it? Have you watched the anime and all this stuff?
Yeah, this is actually only the second time I've read it. I've watched the anime a few times prior as well. I think I prefer the anime, but that's not the manga's fault. It's just that the anime, it's really well done and there's just more of it. So you get more of the story than the manga covers. Because again, they're based on ongoing light novels. And so it's not officially complete. Although I think they find a good stopping point in both versions. So yeah, this is my second time coming to the manga, but it is a story that I have revisited a lot and is it's very, very, very close to my heart. So yeah, a fair bit of familiarity with it, I would say.
Okay, and I will admit to the listeners that this is the first time I have read it, and I have not watched the anime. I'm very bad.
No, that makes me happy. I'm glad that this was an excuse to get you into it. So that's great.
I know. I was like, how did I miss this though? Like, it was never on my radar even.
I call it the shoujo gem that time forgot because the anime came out like right as the bottom dropped out of the industry in the mid-aughts. So like Geneon was bringing it out and then Geneon went under and then it had to there was a whole license reshuffle and we never got season 2. And then the manga came out at about the same time, but the manga industry wasn't as vibrant at that point either. Like it had also kind of dipped. And so, Viz released it under their Shoujo Beat label, which makes it pretty easy to find, which is nice. But I just don't think it got a lot of hype because of the sort of economic situation when it came out, which is very unfortunate. And also it's not a romance forward series, which a lot of people I think look for. So maybe that puts some people off because it's more of a political drama, right?
Yeah, no, totally. But I'm like, that's why I'm like, I should have read it sooner.
Yeah, I think it's very kind of an under the radar one, just because of when it came out. It didn't ping on a lot of people's radars, but the people I know who did find it love it. So
that's the sense I get from the response we got from being like, we're doing this. People were like, what a time. I remember this. Yay, I love it.
Yeah, it has a small but passionate following, I would say. And, I would definitely count myself as one of those people. I am constantly asking 7Cs to bring over the light novels.
Okay. Nice. Well, yeah, we got a question from @SewingRose11 on Twitter who asked, do you feel the sense of longing that we're not getting the light novels in English as well?
Oh, very much I feel that. Very much I feel that sense of longing. Every day I'm like, come on, guys, just bring them over. I know there's like 1 million volumes, but come on, you can do it. There's kind of been an uptick in like fantastical Chinese like court dramas in the light novel world recently. Stuff like the Apothecary Diaries and Culinary Chronicles. So maybe if those do well, it'll encourage them to bring over some classics. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, my thing about this question was like, we're not going to get the light novels. I was like, I wouldn't say never though. Like I think light novels are only just starting to have their time here. At
this point, I feel like anything is possible. There's been so many series where I'm like, oh, we're never going to get that in English. And then lo and behold, we did. So I'll just keep holding out hope forever.
I'm just like, the hope is still there.
Yeah.
Hope springs eternal and
that's
everything.
Right.
That's good. Okay, so yeah, would you like to elaborate on why this is one of your favorite series and you're so desperate for those light novels?
Well, I'm desperate for the light novels because I would just like to spend more time with these characters and see where Shurei's story goes. Because, from the manga, again, not to spoil too much, but we really her journey is really just beginning by the time we get to the end of the manga. And the anime, again, I haven't been able to see season 2 because it never got an English release. And anyway, we don't need to get into a conversation about fan subs. But the anime gets a little deeper into her story and kind of goes more into, what happens after, redacted for spoilers.
Redacted.
But, so that's one of the reasons I really want the light novels is I would like to spend more time with these characters, see how they grow and change and like impact and change the world. Honestly, like I feel like that's where the story is going a little bit. The reason I love it so much is, again, Shurei is a huge part of it. She is just a terrific main character. I don't even know how to describe her because she's observant and really competent and smart, but she also like gets really angry at people and tells them off to their faces. Like I feel like she's a very layered character. Like I can't describe her in a couple of sentences. And I feel that way about a lot of the cast. I think that they're well-written people with a lot of like internal contradictions, who grow over the course of the story in ways that are like really satisfying to watch. I also think it has a good sense of humor. It can be quite silly when it wants to be. I like the political intrigue elements, and I like that the romance isn't a huge part of it because as much as I like shoujo, I tend to lean towards the shoujo where romance isn't like the end all be all central big dramatic focus of it. Your Basadas, your Oran Highs, as some very dramatically different examples of the kind of shoujo I love. So, I like that about this too. I think that it gives the relationships room to breathe and grow naturally as the characters kind of weave in and out of each other's lives. So I appreciate that a lot, and they're very. It's a very endearing cast. So I think those are the main reasons why I love this series.
Yeah, I largely agree with those things. Like, I definitely, reading the summaries, it somewhat turned off my like partner. Like, he was like, oh, Ryuki, they like emphasize that Ryuki sleeps with men initially, but then like, gets a crush on Shurei and everything, and he's like, what is this? I was like, no.
I love that Ryuki is canon bisexual. Can you name me a story where the love interest in manga, where the love interest is canon bisexual? Like, that is so uncommon, and the series is like generally very chill about it. They're like, yeah, he sleeps with men, he also sleeps with women, that's what he does.
I know. I think it's just from the like Wikipedia summary, you get the sense that he was like gay, but then he was turned straight. And I'm like, no, he's just bi.
Oh, yeah, that is to me, like, it. I mean, it's ultimately a moot point because he does fall in love with spoilers. I feel like it's not a spoiler. It's
it's not a spoiler.
He falls in love with Shurei. He falls in love with Shurei pretty quick, and so that he sort of stops really necessarily paying attention to other people because of that. But it doesn't change the fact that he is canon bisexual, like explicitly bisexual. What does he call? What is he? A double-edged sword, I think is like the terminology of the time period, which I thought was a neat way of explaining it in explicit terms, but still like grounding it in like the historical timeline where the word bisexual probably wouldn't have existed. So they're like, here's a slang term they used for bi folks back in dynastic China days.
Yeah. No, I thought that was good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I also really like Shurei. And I think part of the complication with her is that she has many sides, but in a story where I don't want to spoil who is what, but like they all have such duplicitousness about them that like she doesn't really. So it feels like refreshing.
She's a lot more straightforward. That's true. I also like that I feel like she acts differently with different people, which is again very true to life, right? Like your relationships with different people impact how you behave. So, she maybe goes off on Ryuki a little bit more than she does like
definitely
her dad or her surrogate brother, who she has a lot more, I guess, patience for. But
only when her dad tries to serve her tea is she like, no, absolutely not. Away from me.
And she will be blunt when she needs to be. It's like she knows when to be polite and kind of like navigate those etiquette spaces, but also when she doesn't have to navigate them, she has the subtlety of a brick, and I do love that about her. Like, she will tell you what she thinks.
Right.
And and again, not to get too deep in the weeds here, because I'm sure we're going to get into themes. The other thing I love about this series is it actively and directly discusses sexism in a way that I think is very like nuanced and relatable, that I don't think you see as much. So, it's a story of a woman trying to enter like a traditional man sphere, and I think it handles it like really well in a way that is both like painful at times, but also like affirming and inspiring. And I really like that about it too.
Yes, I felt all of those emotions. I was like, stop, I've done this. I don't want to, I don't want this. But also it's good. Yay, she's going to succeed. Yay. Okay, so hopefully if you haven't read the Story of Saiunkoku before, we've sold you on it. So if you want to read it, it is, from what I saw, it was pretty easily accessible. Shojo Beat still appeared to be publishing it in print as well, or like places still had stock of it, so you can get it in print. It's also available digitally. Oops, I forgot to check if the anime is anywhere legally.
It technically is available on, as of the recording of this, it is available, the first season, on Retro Crush and I think Amazon Prime. It is listed for some reason under the title Color Cloud Palace. And it is and it is only the dub. So if you're looking for it, you have to look up Color Cloud Palace, and color is spelled the British way, just to make it a little bit harder for Americans to find it.
Fun.
Yeah, just to bury it deeper down in the algorithm. The dub is fine. The sub has like a cast of all-stars, so it's hard to compete. But I mean, I guess it's better than nothing. So as soon as the sub comes out, we're going to do a watch along of it at Anime Fem for our Chatty AF, our podcast. So like, come on guys, bring that sub over. Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do it. We got it ready. Okay. So now we're gonna spoil all the things because there's a lot of things to spoil, honestly. Like, so if you don't want to know about those things, just stop this episode now. And here we go. We're gonna talk about some more characters because there are a lot of them, and they all again have 5 different identities that you unravel throughout the thing. So that's fun, and I apologize in advance that I'm definitely going to mess up their names. I'm going to mix up who I'm talking about because half of them have names that are very similar to each other. And I'm like, oh no.
If I get confused, I'll ask for clarification. So we'll get through it. It'll be all right.
Yes. I'm just like, I remember some subtweets about me mispronouncing the Basara pro tag a while ago. So, just subtweet me again, everybody.
It happens. It happens when you're talking, right? Like, I mean, nobody's perfect.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Shurei already, but we haven't really talked about Ryuki. Oh, Ryuki.
Ryuki is also a character with layers. What do you think about him? Because this is your first time through, so I'm curious. First time through, what are your thoughts on Ryuki?
He did great on me. Like, I was like, you are too silly. I like his whole thing where he's pretending to be a fool, right? And like, actually, he's not. He's just like, I really wanted my brother to come. Like, I wanted them to unexile him and him to have to be king instead of me. Like, good ploy there.
Yeah. Well, and he has so much trauma surrounding the court. Yes. Like, I mean, I think with Ryuki, I always kind of have to remind myself, like, because he definitely has that element of being, sort of privileged and pampered because he is the emperor, but also like he's an abuse survivor, and it's a huge part of his character, and like his survival strategy of like not seeming dangerous was almost certainly a part of like one of the reasons he survived to adulthood in that very cutthroat political landscape. So he's sad, which is if you want to get me to love your anime boy. Make him sad.
I know. I feel like I wanted that to carry through more. Like, it's very emphasized in the first 2 volumes, right? When it's setting up Shurei and Ryuki's relationship. But then after that, it kind of becomes the Shurei show, and he's always just there, like, pining and trying to, find a way to be in her life, which is always silly. And then his only serious moments come more from, like, people are trying to prevent Shurei from being a civil servant, and I'm not gonna stand by and let that happen. You know? Like,
yeah. No, I agree. I wish we did get a little bit more of his like internal character struggles outside of his relationship with Shurei as the story goes. But part of that is just Shurei is the main character, so that's kind of
like fine, great. I love it.
Yeah, I do. What did you think of the way he like handles having a crush on her, but like also supporting her dreams?
Oh, yes. This is a part where I could see why you'd really want to know more about how this goes, because I'm like, so far, he's doing a great job, right? Like, mostly. He's doing a great job being like, her dreams come before my wishes, where it is somewhat clear that she doesn't focus on him, as much as he focuses on her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, like, adores her and everything. So it's just like, and his recognition that, like, if he could force her to come, but then he would destroy everything that he likes about her. And I'm like, yes, most manga do not acknowledge that. They just like do the terrible thing and then don't really like overtly say that.
Yeah, nice. I like that Ryuki, like, he definitely has to kind of fight through that impulse to be like, I want to keep her with me all the time and just have her be here. And like, and he even has that thought at the beginning, like, if I pass this law, she'll like me more. as opposed to I should pass this law to let women take the exams because they deserve to take the exams. Like, his motives aren't 100% pure.
I feel like overall the narrative kind of is like overall, not just in this situation, like motives don't matter as much as end results, kind of, though.
How do you mean? Like what's another example?
Like morally, like, because they're all so conniving and everything. Like, they're not trying to do the morally, like, upstanding high road thing ever. They're like, this is a means to an end.
Oh, yeah.
And if the end is good, it's good.
Yeah, I think that's why Shurei and Egetsu are, like, such a, like, like shake the foundations of this government. I like to joke that the end of this series is like a full-on like proletariat revolution led by Shurei and Egetsu. But no, you're right. Like there's a lot of like, court intrigue and machinations and like clans jockeying for power. And Ryuki grew up in that landscape. So I guess my point was like, I totally agree with you that like I really love how he like acknowledges that it's important for like to honor Shurei's agency. But I also like that the series doesn't let him be like a perfect human being, right? Like he still kind of has to fight through that desire to like, just, I'm the emperor. She could just be my girlfriend if I ordered it kind of deal.
yes.
And then be like, no, don't do that. That's wrong. Good job, Ryuki. I'm proud of you.
That's too far. Exactly. Yeah. But it makes sense for him to think it. You always got to think the bad thing and then like not do it, right? Like,
well, and again, especially when we look at like, I like the way the series, because it takes place in fantasy China, but there's not a ton of actual magic. Like there's the fantastical elements are very like background level, right? Like there's some immortals kicking around, and later in the series, like past where the manga goes, there's a few other like kind of magic's not supernatural is maybe the word I should use that sort of drop in like very subtly into the story, but it's pretty grounded in like just like day-to-day living in a world that is similar to but not exactly like dynastic China. And so I like that the series, I feel like it acknowledges those historical roots by having the characters have these thoughts about like, oh well, like women should be in the home, and then they're like having to unlearn those behaviors, which, listen, there's plenty of people in our current day who think the same thing.
Yes.
But it wouldn't have been like, it would have been just accepted fact in that historical period. So I do like the way that it acknowledges that and then goes, but that's not the story we're telling. We're telling the progressive version of that story.
Yeah, totally. There was one point early on where I was a bit confused because I thought it implied at one point that women used to be able to take the exam, but then they changed the law, and I was like, but then why is it so vehemently opposed? And then I was like, maybe I read that wrong.
I don't remember that. You could be right, and I may have just missed it. But if that was the case, I think it was so long ago that it's like we don't do things that way anymore, kind of deal.
Yeah, they had a whole revolution after the previous emperor, and they're like, we're a totally different country now. It's all wild and everything over here. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very much coming off of like years of political unrest. So
so like, don't rock the boat.
As Shurei's particular traumas would love to tell us, the hard times in the city.
Yes, hard times in the city. That's the real name of this manga.
That's one of the other things I like about it, though, is right from the start, it's like, there was all this political unrest, and at the high level, like, it's the Game of Thrones idea of like, I shouldn't talk about Game of Thrones because it sucks, and this is so much better.
Yes.
I'm still angry at the end of Game of Thrones. It's been years, and I'm still angry. But that
I've always
idea,
been angry.
But that idea of when the nobles are fighting, like it's the commoners who suffer the most. And Shurei was, because her dad has been cut off from the main family. Like she was very much on the ground for that, and so she and Ryuki have very different experiences of what that moment looked like, and it motivates her entire life, right? Like I want to make sure that people have food and medicine and have the ability to make their own choices. Like that's her whole thing. Which again, proletariat revolution, Shurei. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yes. And this was a thought I had before, and then I forgot it, and now I remember again.
Yeah, come back to it.
In response to the question of like Ryuki being contradictory about his desire to be with Shurei, but also trying to help her in her dreams when those things don't mesh. Like it feels like he is kind of in her position from the beginning, where she's like, I keep dreaming about this thing that I know is literally impossible, but I still really want to do it. And then he's like, okay, I'll make that dream come true, but now my dream is like, I'm going to wait for you, even though I know that's impossible, question mark.
Might be on hold forever and ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually she'll retire, probably, and then they can get married.
They can be like 50 years old and married finally.
That's right. And in the meantime, they can just like have little garden trysts, because that's their thing.
Yes, totally. They're really doing it correctly. Okay, well, so we have some other characters to talk about, which is Seiran is the guard of Shurei, but also Ryuki's brother, but we don't acknowledge that anymore.
Yeah, he's basically Shurei's adoptive brother at this point, right? Like, I mean, Shoka and her mom, whose name I always forget, like took him in. So I think of him as like Shurei's older brother for the most part.
Okay, that makes sense. I definitely like him. To me, I'd written a question later here that's like, which character did the best at forging a new identity or staying the same? And for me, it's so interesting that, they all have 50 million identities going around. And Seiran is the one who's like, I definitely just don't acknowledge that I used to be a prince. And I will not respond to Ryuki calling me brother. And like, he knows that and catches himself, like, I shut that down entirely.
Your brother is dead. Wink.
Your brother is dead. Wink. Get on with it.
Yeah, come on. We have to continue living this fiction forever. Yeah, I feel bad for Seiran. I think the one thing I do think the manga does, and I'll try not to spend too much time talking about the anime since this is a manga podcast. One thing I think the manga does a little better than the anime is the anime kind of scrubs off his sharper edges, and so I do like that you see a little bit more of him as this like kind of quiet manipulator, except when he's with Ensei, and then he just like lets loose and is very harsh, which is another, again, characters interact differently with different people in this series, which gives them a lot of facets and layers, which I really like. But in the anime, they kind of sand off his edges to the point where sometimes I forget he's a character, and then he shows up on screen, and I'm like, oh yeah, Seiran's here too, isn't he? But I think that's the way Seiran would want it, because he's very much about flying under the radar, right?
Yeah. Like, he just shows up when you need him. He's like, oh, you need me to beat up some bad guys? Here I am. I'm very pretty still, too. And you're like, oh, that's good.
He's so grateful to Shurei's family. He just wants them to be happy. That's like his only goal in life. So,
yeah.
Which I think is why, for me, he's like not an especially interesting character, because he doesn't have a ton of personal goals.
No.
But he's a sweet boy. I just don't have a lot to add. You said you did like him, though?
I like him. I think he's like the prettiest. I know that, that's supposed to be debatable in this manga. There's lots of pretty men, but I'm like, no, Seiran.
He's the one you would like to look at the most.
Yes. I'm like, give me a nice print of Seiran. That's what I'm here for. Yes. So then there's also Ron, who is a general of the guard, who I think he's the one that I struggle to be like, why are you here the most with, honestly? Yeah,
Ron kind of, I mean, he and Seiran both to a point are kind of like plot characters, right? Like the Ron clan, and that's the other thing, that, like, you kind of see it towards the end. The Ron clan has a lot of power in the community. And I think, I suspect, because again, I haven't read the novels, I suspect the deeper you get into like all the factions and different like families and clans and all that politicking, I suspect he becomes like a much more important character because of that bridge. But yeah, his thing is very much like, I don't know, I always feel like he's hiding his claws. Does that make sense? Like, he's like, no, I just want to go down to the red light district and have sex with some pretty ladies. But he's also like running this extensive intelligence network with said pretty ladies. Like he has a lot of connections in the city, which I think makes him kind of an interesting character. And I do like his interactions with Kochou. I think the two of them together are quite fun.
No, I definitely ship Kochou and Ron.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah. No, I like that ship.
That's definitely my OTP here,
Excellent.
Excellent.
The womanizer and the woman hater. They're perfect for each other.
Yes. They're perfect for each other. You see it. Okay. I do really like Kochou, though.
I do too. Like, even though he's like a self-professed woman hater, like, I like how you get into the series and it's he was just traumatized by marriage proposals. He doesn't actually have anything against women, like, specifically. No, Koyu's one of my boys. I do like Kochou quite a bit, and his terrible sense of direction.
Yes, his terrible sense of direction. His like crotchetiness, but he's just a Soon. So I'm like, yes, okay, tell me more, you Soon.
I had not thought of him that way before, but you are correct. Yeah,
I definitely put him in the same, like, when I think of him, I think of like Tatsuki from Shigigi or something. You know?
I can see that a little bit. Yeah, kind of a blustery, grumpy exterior, but secretly deep down on the inside, squishy.
Yeah, like
Heart of
say they
gold.
hate women, but really trying to like help the main character who is a woman. You know,
Constantly. Yeah. I also he's one of the few. Again, I suspect with some of the other characters we would get more of their story as we go. But we do get a little bit more with him and his like family situation because, like a lot of characters in this, he is adopted, and has that whole thing with Shurei's uncle Reishin, right? Where like they have that whole kind of arc where he's trying to figure out if Reishin like actually gives a damn about him.
It was sad. I was like, of course he does.
Yeah, I find it interesting that both Shoka and Reishin express love by like giving their children freedom, basically, right? Like Shoka's like, yeah, I want Shurei to, which we'll have to talk about Shoka at some point.
Yeah, he's next.
Oh, perfect. You know, he's like, Shurei should live the life she wants. I'm not going to force her to marry anybody. And then Reishin effectively does the same thing with Koyu. Like, you should go live your life. If you want to go sell dim sum, like, yeah, go sell dim sum, man.
Yeah.
Go be free. But they say it in such completely different ways that like Koyu here is like, screw off. Basically, yeah. I don't give a damn.
I know. Yeah. Well, Koyu probably also has an issue with it because he is adopted, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
There's an extra layer there for sure.
Yeah, I think you see that with a lot of the kids in this, right? Like Korean early on, who sure does make some mistakes. Korean does. Just a little poisoning to show her love for her adopted
a lot of
dad.
Poisoning. Yeah.
But I think you see that with a lot of them where it's that sense of, and I mean, Seiran too, to a point, right? That sense of like, I'm so grateful. I need to like show you my gratitude towards like you taking me in when my own family like turned me out, but also that insecurity of like, but do you actually care about me, because I'm not by blood your son. So I do like the way they kind of finish that arc up where he goes to Shoka and Shoka's like, oh god, my brother's an idiot. Okay, here's what he meant. You're good, he loves you, he's just really bad at saying it.
Well, it also comes off weird to the children, too, because, I mean, the stereotype of parents is that they're trying to control you and everything, right? And so for them to just be like, go do whatever, it's like, okay, are you hippies? Like, we didn't have hippies yet, So they're, like, confused.
Yeah, there's a really interesting contrast in the story between, like, that sort of historical setting where, it very much would have been honor your parents, do what they want you to do, carry on the clan and the family name, especially for these higher up noble families, versus like, that sort of expectation versus the way the actual individual characters act, which is a lot more kind of modern, which I think is, again, a very fun way to do a historical fantasy, is to bring those elements in. But yeah, it throws Koyu off, right? Like it throws people off when they're like, no, you have the freedom to choose because I want you to be happy. He doesn't know how to deal with that. So.
Except for the talk where they were going to make him marry Shurei. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want that.
Yeah. I did like Shoka was basically like, yeah, I'm not going to make her do that. So I don't know what you want from me, bruv. Yeah. Good luck, I guess. Yeah, I have no idea how that. Yeah, I don't think Koyu wants to marry Shurei. That's my personal thought right now. Maybe this eventually becomes a harem situation. But right now it's like a bunch of pretty boyfriends.
Yeah, no, well, because Koyu wants to be with Ran. Like, that's just...
Of course, obviously. Yeah, definitely. No, you're right. How could I forget?
How could you forget? Okay, so Shoka, he's here. He sure is a dad. He's less than 40. That's garbage.
He's pushing 40. He's like 39, right?
Okay.
They had kids young back in the day. Listen, killing people for a living ages you.
Yes. Okay, I was just like, oh, he is much younger than I assumed he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I have to check myself, like, with the ages of the characters. Like, oh, no, they're all actually probably fairly young because they would have been having kids in their, like, late teens, early 20s. So even with a 16-year-old daughter, like, he's not that old.
Okay, well, good for him. He's also murdered a lot of people, apparently.
Yes. He's also one of the best dads in manga and anime history, I would argue.
See, look at this. He is an assassin, but he's also the best dad. And that's what you get from this manga, right?
Yeah, you get complex characters with layers, lots of sides.
Layers.
He's a retired assassin. He got out of the game.
Okay, all right. He had to do some assassin-y things in volume 2. That's all I'm saying.
He did some mild assassin work. And you know what? Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in.
Exactly.
What were your thoughts on Shoka? Did you like him? Were you confused about him? Where did you fall? I love Shoka, so I will start with that.
You're like, I love him. He is the best dad ever. Okay, cool. I definitely, not knowing a lot of things going into it, I was like, he's an assassin.
No, that moment is buck wild. That moment, threw me for a loop the first time I watched the series. I'm like, wait, what? Happy chill dad is a killer? What?
I know. I was like, I was so confused. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then from there, I had to be like, I kept looking at him and I was like, but he's an assassin. But, I got over that. And then I was like, oh, but he is such a good dad to everybody. And does that make it okay? Like, I guess so. Like, I accept it. Like, I like him a lot. I would, yeah. I don't know.
Well, and he's sort of like, he has some moments too where he sort of says, like, I did some pretty terrible things and I thought I would, and like, to me, I did them for the right reasons. It was like for the betterment of the country, but also I'm not going to pretend like they weren't heinous acts that I would like to get away from. Like, I don't want that life anymore. And yeah, layers. His scenes with Ryuki, I didn't remember them hitting like that in the anime, so maybe the manga gave more space to them. But his scenes with Ryuki, when Ryuki's like a little sad, traumatized, abused lad, are so good. They're just so good. I'm so glad. Like, you realize that he's like this connecting thread between so many of the characters who would have been just miserable without him there. Wonderful dad. I think one of the moments for me where I because I already loved him because he's, again, very, very nice and supportive, but will mess you up if you mess with his kids. Like,
don't mess him.
Watch out. Do not mess with his kids.
He will cut you.
He will cut you, quite literally. But the moment when Shurei, as a younger girl, goes to work at Kochou's brothel, and Shurei thinks it's a big secret, and her dad immediately finds out and goes to Kochou and is like, hey, I know she's going to be working for you. I would like you to look after her because there's going to be stuff that, like, she's a girl. I'm not. There's going to be stuff I'm not going to be able to help her with. I would really appreciate it if you could look after her for me. And she ends up stepping into that mother figure partly for that. But I just thought that was such a nice moment of, A, the story is very, like, sex worker positive and non-judgmental, which I think is pretty cool.
Yep.
And B, like as a single dad, sort of realizing, like, oh, this is this is like a respected, I guess, powerful. Kochou is powerful lady who can maybe be something for my daughter that maybe I can't be. And so, going to her and specifically asking her to look after her, I thought was just a very sweet and, like, self-aware moment with him. And pretty much anytime he's sad about, again, sad boys, anytime he's sad about his wife, I'm like, I want to hug you, Shoka.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, no, he's definitely, like, it definitely feels like, he's like, I was an assassin and now I definitely don't want that. So he like sacrifices a lot of things to kind of bury that away and be like, now I just take care of children, like the repentance is strong.
Now
here.
he's a librarian.
Yes, now he's a librarian.
Like all librarians, former assassins. So yeah, that's just what you do.
Yes. That's just how it goes. Mm-hmm. And you just take in every orphan you can find, and when the hard times come, you're just like, I give away all my money. And I'm like, that's cool. Like,
strip my trees bare to feed my neighbors.
Yes.
He's a good dad.
He's a good dad. No, definitely that moment where he went to Kochou, I was just like, everything in this manga just throws me for a loop in the best way. Like, I love it.
It does. It, again, because I've read / seen it so many times, like, sometimes I forget that the plot twists are kind of like, wait, what? And the one with Shoka is very much like a jaw hits the floor, excuse moment. So.
That was definitely the biggest one for me. Yeah. I was like, yo, okay, this has set the bar now. Like, I understand going forward, nothing is as shocking.
This is true.
More, like, going forward, I was more like, oh, I'm dumb for not like having seen, or like I'm silly for not having seen this twist coming. Like, of course, obviously, after that Shoka thing, like,
yeah, I think most of the plot twists in this make sense in retrospect, even if you don't see them coming. You're like, oh yeah, of course it was that guy because of this, and this that happened, or something like that, But the Shoka one, I don't think you could have seen that coming.
No, I was so shocked. Yeah, but so Kochou, is she like the second best character in you?
Probably, right? I mean, what do you think of Kochou?
I definitely was like, okay, again, this manga. I guess it was an interesting moment for like thinking about Shurei, where it shows a lot of lack of judgmentalness on her part, because for the most part she seems pretty straight laced and everything. Like she's like, you're breaking the law. This is not gambling is not a respectable way to make money. Like all those types of things. But she never has any of those thoughts seemingly about Kochou or like that line of work. Like we don't get much insight into it, but I was just like, oh yeah, she really respects it. And they have that whole like makeup discussion. And I was like, I never wear makeup and I hate makeup, and y'all making me be like, okay, I get it for like first time ever.
I'm so glad you brought that scene up, because of all the moments in Saiunkoku, I think that is the one that stands out to me the sharpest. As far as I watched it in college, and I had, like you, I don't wear makeup. I have no interest in it. It's time and money I don't want to spend,
Yes.
I definitely had some of that like internalized misogyny going on in college of like, oh, I'm not like other girls. I'm not into that kind of stuff. BS that you need to work through. I was young college for what it's worth, like 19 when I watched this series.
You're like sophomore year and below, everybody.
Yeah, but that scene really hit me as like, oh, that's totally valid. Like the idea of it is like, armor that you wear because if you cry, then you'll ruin your makeup. So like it's a reminder to not cry and to like, stay strong. No, that scene has always resonated with me, even though I don't wear makeup and still do not. Like it wasn't like I watched that scene and then went, I should wear makeup now. No, I'm still not into it. But like I think this series does a really good job with like positive femininity in some ways. And I think that moment is a really resonant one. Again, especially because this series is, we're going on like 10, 15 years. What? Oh God, we're going on 20 years. We're going on 20. Let's say 15 for now.
Okay.
We're going, it's like, especially from when the light novels were written. So I think in some ways it was kind of ahead of its time, which is another thing that is, I appreciate about it. So yeah, I love that moment with Kochou. Also, she's a crime boss, which is cool.
Yes, she's one of the syndicate bosses. And I was like, oh, okay, of course.
And the only one who can beat Ryu and Ryu Ren the gambler. So she's hardcore, the legendary Kochou. I also love the scene where Shurei's like been trying so hard. She's like, I have to stay strong. I can't cry in front of anybody else. Like I need to be tough while I'm at the court. And then she has a moment alone with Kochou and is like, I'm going to cry in front of you now. That's going to happen. And she's kind of taken on this mother figure role for her, which is such an unexpected character for that job, right? Like you were saying, like, Shurei's not judgmental. There's definitely moments where she's like, I'm not sure gambling is respectable, or she has that moment early with Ryuki where she's like, I'm not going to sleep with you because for me, I don't want to sleep with somebody unless I have romantic feelings for them. And she kind of explains it and then goes, but like, it's cool if you want to sleep with people, like no judgment on others. Like that's just me.
Right. Like she keeps her personal things where she has her morals. She's like, I don't need to impose them on everyone.
Yeah.
That's fine.
There's very much a line she draws in terms of like, are you hurting other people? Cause like, she gets on Ryuki early for like, you're ignoring the country and you're the emperor and that's bad. And I am going to judge you for that. But she definitely draws that line of like, is this hurting someone? No? Okay, it's not for me, but you do you kind of thing. So
now I'm like, what would happen if she knew her dad was an assassin?
Oh boy. I wonder if that ever happens. I'm sure they'd have a long conversation about it. It would
They'd sit down and have a nice talk over dinner.
Maybe she'd just fall over dead from a heart attack because she couldn't picture it, right? Like, he'd tell her and she'd just laugh and be like, oh, Dad, you're so funny.
Yeah, that's true. She wouldn't believe it. And then he'd be like, okay, well, I told her, so I was truthful. Like,
it's not my fault if she didn't believe it.
Yes, exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was going to say I like how, like positive femininity this series is for not even having a lot of female characters.
It doesn't, but which it kind of makes sense because she's working in like this political sphere where almost everybody is a man. But I feel like it gets good mileage out of the few female characters that are in it, and you definitely get to see some like different ways of living. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah, totally.
And admittedly, like, again, it dates itself a little bit. There's sometimes reading parts of it where they'll be talking about like, be proud of being a woman, do things a man can't do kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's a little gender essentialist, a little, but like, I get what you're going for. I understand what you mean. You're talking about like, not feeling like you have to like completely let go of the feminine aspects of yourself. And Shurei having that conversation where she's like, I don't want to give up those parts of myself that maybe don't fit in this like quote unquote manly sphere of politics. Like I want to still keep those parts of me and approach politics with those aspects of myself. I think that's like a very, valuable and important moment in the series.
Yeah. When I read those things, I was definitely like, oh, that makes sense to me. That, she's like, I don't want to go into this and do something that, like, I don't want to do the exact same thing that all the men before me have been doing, right? Like, technically, it's like, because they treat me differently because I'm a woman, I have a different perspective than them, so I should do something else. And I was like, that's fair. I agree.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree with it. It's one of those things where to me, it's sometimes a language thing where that you use words like man and woman, like, oh, well, all men are like this and all women are like that. And I'm like, okay, well, you're talking more about like feminine and masculine like characteristics. So I get what you're going for.
Right.
And I do think with this one, like, I think it does a nice job of, again, positive femininity and being like, no, you don't, you can exist in a sphere that is on a stage, I think is how Kochou says it, that, maybe traditionally was one that was masculine that only men were on, but like, that doesn't mean you have to fit exactly into that box that they fit in, like bring yourself to this, do things, see things from a different perspective. Which both Shurei and Egetsu, I think, both do in ways that are different, but really fascinating and continue towards my theory that they will eventually topple the empire, topple the monarchy,
patriarchy,
and the patriarchy, all of the above, class,
all the archies,
class and gender revolution from Egetsu and Shurei.
Okay, I think Egetsu is the last like character that we should dive deep into here, and why does Yogetsu exist?
So I do know the answer for that, but it's in the anime. I will say like okay. That's one of those like sort of
there is an answer.
Yeah, there's a supernatural. Okay. It's a supernatural element to the series. I blanked on it earlier when we were talking about it. It eventually gets addressed. Like at this point, it's a weird thing about Egetsu.
Yes,
I think it's in. I know it's in the anime, but I can't remember exactly where. You get more of Egetsu's backstory, and you find out like why is Yogetsu basically. It's not just,
my question.
Yeah, it's not just like a weird plot thing. Like it ties into his whole like story arc and character and stuff. But the manga just never got there. So it sort of is just like an odd little bit of fantasticalness where Egetsu gets really strong and angry when he drinks alcohol, which, hey, some people do get really strong and angry when they drink alcohol. So
I mean, fair enough. Yeah, it just became a way for him to lose his tablet, find his tablet, like, cool, whatever.
Yeah, the tablet and ring shuffle that goes on in the back half of the series.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, otherwise, what do you think of Egetsu?
I like him as, to me, again, he's one of those characters where, because I know a little bit more about him, he and Shurei, like, by the end of this, are co-governors, so he gets more time in the anime, so I know a little bit more about him because of that. I like him. I don't feel like we get quite enough of him in the manga for him to leave much of an impression. I like that he is like pretty emphatically not a romantic interest for Shurei. Like they are friends, they are co-workers and study buddies, and that's great. And I also like that he provides, to me, he's an interesting counterpoint to Shurei because he's a boy, but he's also lived in like poverty even deeper than Shurei's, like out in the provinces, adopted, lived at a temple, has no sponsor, doesn't know anything about court etiquette, so like accidentally pisses off a bunch of people. So I think he shows like a different aspect to the way privilege works in this government system. Because theoretically it's a meritocracy, right? Like everybody gets to take the exam, and if you do well on the exam, then you can work your way up.
Right.
which was very unique to, maybe not unique because I don't know every culture in the world, but from like that medieval time period, like that element of like, in theory, you could work your way up the ranks through like hard work and intelligence was pretty unusual. So like it's a very interesting facet of dynastic China in theory. In practice, you had to have access to the materials, and books weren't that easy to get a hold of. If you lived out in the provinces, you were dirt poor probably, and probably illiterate.
Yeah, it was like getting taught at that time to even then be able to take the exam was super rare.
Yeah. Like if you lived in a town, there might be a tutor, like Shurei tutor some of the kids in the city. Like you might have some people like that who would just do, but it wasn't like they had a public education system.
No.
So it very much favored the wealthy and the privileged, which Shurei does have that. Like she doesn't have money, but she does have family connections, even if she's not entirely aware of them. And Agetsu's not a girl, but he doesn't have any of those connections on like the nobility side of things. So I think having the two of them together to really poke holes in the idea that this is a meritocracy is like a quiet critique that the series does that I really like, because I think you can apply it to modern day like bootstrap mentality too, right? Like just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Okay, yeah, I'll just get past the the debilitating poverty and the sexism and the
Right.
whatever else. So to me, that's one of the things that's I think Egetsu's more interesting from a thematic point at this point in the story than as a character, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I was going to be like, I think that goes into like, it was interesting to see them when the sexism is confronted directly, and not just sexism, because Igetsu is getting it too, like ageism, even,
Yeah, that too, because he's also very young.
Yeah. And they're like, well, how dare somebody so young be the best person here? Like, that's garbage.
This
You
upstart.
must cheat it.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, no respect, basically.
Won't marry any of our daughters. How dare he?
Yes. Doesn't know proper etiquette and everything. So it almost feels like the meritocracy is, or like the thing where, I guess, I don't know what I'm trying to say now. It's like, they confront the sexism directly, but the way that they have to do that is that they're like, yeah, you have to do it kind of the way, like if you give an inch, they'll take everything.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
right?
They'll immediately see you as weak and walk all over you. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there becomes a kind of a contradiction there where it's like, okay, you need to do it differently and show your worth and everything. But to do that, and again, you always have to be like 10,000 times better. You have to take the highest road possible in a way that all the other characters didn't have to, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like Shurei can't just pass the exam. She has to pass in the top 20. She can't just be like good enough. She has to be one of the best to even be considered. And then people still think she cheated. I love the layers of that in Shurei's story, where it's like the people around her, I think at one point her dad basically says ignore the haters, which is fair advice. It's not easy, but it's fair. But they're like, well, if you just keep, people will be like, well, if you just keep at it, like eventually they'll acknowledge you. And Shurei has to go through so many extra steps to get people to finally just back off of her. Like she has to take an exam in front of everybody basically to prove that she knows her stuff. And, and like, it's frustrating to watch that scene where she gets like pelted with mud and then yelled at for, and then she just has to stand there and not say anything because she knows that if she complains, even though it's unfair, they'll think that she's just like, they'll just think she's like weak and can't take it and like look down on her even more for it. God, that moment makes you angry in a way that like it cuts to my core anyway. I don't know about you.
I was very upset reading that. Just because there's also so many people within that scene, like, like Igetsu, I think eventually shows up, and like Koyu's there, Minister Ro is there, Minister Sai is there, and it's just like, none of them, they're all just like, yep, that happened, clean it up. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Koyu, like you heard these people be terrible, and I was just like so upset, like viscerally upset in that moment.
It's so upsetting in that moment. I think that's around the type where, but then you also get some moments with some of the men in the court who she's been hanging out with, like Koyu, in other scenes where they'll be like, I know I can't publicly support her because then people will just say that it's favoritism. Like I know I can't, I cannot do that because that would also hurt her. And so everybody's, very much trying to tap dance around it. I do like that the series, though, like, it sort of acknowledges that, like, at a certain point, there's not a lot that Shurei can do except just, like, put her head down and just keep trying. But at the same time, there's some really good conversations about, like, she and Egetsu have so much stacked against them that they need that, like, private support, right? Like the private allies, like Ryuki helping them get to the meeting on time. Or there's a really good conversation with Reishin, who is a character.
He sure is a character.
He's Reishin so much. But there is one really good scene with him where somebody says something to him like, I didn't think you were into, like, picking favorites. And he's like, I'm not, but if you plant a sapling in barren soil, it's going to wither no matter how sturdy the tree is. So it's some metaphor to that effect, right? And his point is like, they have we need to give them some kind of structural support so they have a chance. And, again, there's so much nuance built into this story that it's deceptively intelligent behind the, some of the kind of, like, wild political plots, and just, like, really enjoyable character writing in the way it handles, like, Shurei having to fight all this sexism and Egetsu the classism to, maybe a lesser extent in the court.
Yeah. No, I definitely think around this time, one of my favorite quotes was from Ron, and he was talking to Ryuki, who I think they were both like, they saw Shurei get picked on, and Ryuki wanted to jump in and be like, this is so unfair and everything is so unjust. And Ron was like, you can't say that, right? Like, if she cries, like, whatever, it's whatever. So what he said was, you should be protecting her pride and her life right now, not her feelings. And I was like, yo.
Yeah. That's a very good line. And it ties into, like, later when Shurei and Ryuki have one of their little garden meetings where they can just, like, be themselves in front of each other. I think, because it's like towards the end of that volume, I think, she says, like, thank you for not treating me differently. Like, I feel like I can stand on equal footing with you guys, instead of earlier when everybody was protecting me like I was a princess. Like, I'm not that anymore. I'm growing up. I'm taking on this role. So she ends up appreciating that in the long run, but oof, it is hard to watch in the moment. And Ryuki's impulse is very understandable, right? Like, you want to help people when you see them being treated unjustly, but, like, if you just jump in, then it's saviorism, right? Like, Ryuki can't be a savior. He just has to be, like, an ally in the background. So it's complicated.
It is definitely complicated.
Yeah.
Like, I used to play hockey on men's teams. And so I definitely just, like, there was one year where I was a goalie. So there were too many goalies on the, like, age level team that I was supposed to be on. So they didn't give us, like, a tryout. They were just like, okay, you're a girl. You're going to go play with the younger kids. And everybody tried to be like, that's so unfair, but, like, systems. So like, I played with them, and then my team was the best. And then, of course, it was like, oh, well, you cheated by having a goalie who's older. And I'm like, you guys don't get to play it both ways.
Yeah,
like,
you put me here, jerks.
Yeah. Like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, I didn't want this. So yeah. So every time I had to watch these scenes, I was like, no, this is what it reminds me of.
It just clicked in my head. You wrote the article for Anime Feminist about My Hero Academia and ice hockey, right?
Yes, I did.
Yes, that was a great article. So no, you probably felt Shurei into your bones. Yeah,
I know. I was like, stop. It's like, I can't.
Yeah.
so triggered right now. I'm just like,
yeah. There are definitely moments in the back half of this where it's like, whew, I might need a minute. But I do think it does a good job of, like, it pushes right up to that edge, but then there's still that overall sense of, like, inspiration and hope, right?
And nothing, like, so irrevocably bad happens to her, right? Like, so it's okay.
Yeah. There's like a very brief moment where she's threatened with assault in the brothel, which I hate that scene. It doesn't need to be there, but otherwise it's nothing. No, it's bullying, right? Like, it is very relatable because it is the kind of stuff that a lot of women who enter traditionally male fields run up against. So the series knew what it was talking about.
And again, it's so hopeful in the end because she does succeed. So I was like, okay, it's good in the end.
Yeah. And maybe it's a little optimistic to be like, and then everybody backed off. But
I mean, of course.
But I'm happy with it. I'll take a little. I mean, it's a fiction. It's fiction. I'll take a little aspirational fantasy.
Yeah, we can't dwell on everything. Then we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. We got to get to the next plot point here. So
yes, there are so many plot points apparently.
But yeah, no, it's the moment when she sort of defends herself in front of everybody is also one of my favorite scenes, because I forget the exact quote, although I did have to screen cap it and tweet it because I loved it so much when I was rewatching the anime. But it's when Ryuki basically says, like, why do you as a woman want to be a public official? And Shurei's like, if you're asking me specifically why, like, as a woman I want to do it, I don't have an answer for you. Me personally want to help the people in this country in whatever way I am capable. And I loved that moment because it's a very polite way of being like, you wouldn't ask a man that question. But it's just such a good moment of, again, highlighting the kinds of questions that women do run up against in these fields. And then having Shurei, who, in other scenes has been like, I am myself, and who I am is, there are feminine aspects to me, and I'm going to embrace those. But I'm doing this as me, Shurei, a person who wants to help people, not like as the token woman. So, that's another scene that like has really stuck with me, and I feel in my bones a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, get him, Shurei, get him. Very motivational. This series is for me.
I know. Now whenever I like hit something and I'm like, I want to be whiny and complain, I'm gonna be like, just channel Shurei like that.
Yeah.
What needs to happen here?
Hey, it's okay to cry sometimes. It's just time and place, right?
Time and place. You got to do it.
Yeah,
right,
and Shurei is allowed to be emotionally vulnerable, which I like about this series. Like, she's not just like tough and gritty and hard nosed and never gets frazzled. Like, she gets upset, which makes her I keep coming back to a very well-rounded protagonist. So the writing in the series is so good.
Like, on an unrelated, still a Shurei, like, really good. It's one of those vulnerable moments, actually, though, where she's with Ensei.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love Ensei. We didn't get a chance to talk about Ensei. I love Ensei.
We didn't even mention his name yet. Oh, Ensei, who has a Kenshin scar.
I love his Kenshin scar. Ensei, if you said Seiron's the most beautiful boy to you, I like Ensei. I think Ensei is very attractive. They did sort of whitewash him in the manga, which makes me a little annoyed. He's tanner. Oh. He's darker skinned in the anime.
Oh.
But I find when Ensei shaved his beard, I was like, oh, hi, Ensei.
Yeah, I was about to say beard Ensei or clean Ensei.
No, beard Ensei, that's too scruffy. That's too scruffy for me. Maybe if he trimmed it, it might not be too bad, but it is like all over the place.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm a wild beast.
No, when he shaved, I was like, oh, hi, you're adorable. Hello, Ensei.
No, I agree with that assessment. Yes, yeah, he was. Yeah. He was very good.
But he also has a very good, I like he kind of has that brotherly relationship both with Seiron and Shurei, but in like very different ways, where he can he's the only person who can get under Seiron's skin. But he's also like somebody Shurei can talk to and be more open with because he's not directly related to her family. So she can sort of tell him things that she'd feel bad telling her dad or Seiron because it would also hurt them, Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Ensei's great. Sorry, I just wanted to get that out there. What scene were you what scene were you talking about though?
Oh yeah, so I guess it's when they're going to visit Shurei's mom's grave. Mm-hmm. And she feels bad because Shurei used to be very, very sickly all the time. But then after her mom died, she's, has the immune system of a seemingly fairly normal person.
Fairly healthy. Yeah. She seems healthy.
Normal doesn't
right?
exist. Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. Like, she seems healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. So then they're at her grave and, Shurei is getting upset and crying. And she's just like, I just feel like I basically stole my mom's life force. And I've never been able to admit that to anybody. Yeah. But, Ensei, I don't know you that well. And I was just like, no, I'm immediately crying.
Oh, yeah, that's a good moment. Shurei's got that survivor's guilt. I have always sort of suspected that there was some supernatural element to that, right. Even though I don't think it's ever like even in the continuation that I've seen, I don't think it's ever like explicitly stated, but like the fact that Shurei was super sick and then her mom, who'd always been healthy, dies and then Shurei's fine. I'm like, I think something probably did happen here.
It's not like she killed her mom. No. The way that she thinks about it. It's like her mom is protecting her.
Yeah. That's always kind of the sense I've gotten from it. But no, Shurei has like wicked survivor's guilt, and it's another moment in the series where you get to see a different element of her, a different aspect of her that, she wouldn't necessarily show to Seiran or Ryuki, but she's, able to open up to Ensei in a way that she can't those guys.
Yeah, she's like, you don't know me that well, so it's okay to tell you.
Yeah. You didn't know my mom, so it won't hurt. Like, it won't, like, she couldn't say that to her dad.
Yeah.
Like, obviously that would devastate him to think that his daughter blamed herself for her mom's death. Like, there's certain things, like, there's certain things you can't say to the people you care the most about because they're too close to it. And so having somebody else you can talk to about this, Ensei's her therapist, is what I'm trying to say. Ensei's maybe isn't a licensed governor, but he is a licensed therapist.
Oh my goodness. Ensei's so funny. Ensei's also the one who like overtly calls her princess. And I think that like she doesn't actually acknowledge it. She's just like, whatever, Ensei. Like,
yeah, it ends up just kind of being a little cute nickname he has for her is, hi, princess. Well, she saved him, so
yeah. She's
his princess. She fed him food.
Of course. She feeds everybody food.
Oh yeah, I feel like
she's like, I don't have rice.
That's sort of a quiet like undercurrent in the story, is like the sharing of food, right? And the way Shurei, like, even though the family doesn't have money, like if somebody shows up who needs a place to stay or a meal to eat, like she will invite them over and feed them without any hesitation. And her dad is the same way. Like, again, they stripped their garden bare to help their neighbors. So
right, definitely I would say like the core of the manga is really about like, how do you nurture a person, a thing, like a growing thing, in a way that's going to help it thrive and like be its own thing, Yeah,
no, I think that's very true. And, which is why there's so much of the story that's about family, but then also about governance, which is, the nurturing of an entire country. So, no, I think that's a very good point. I think that's, at the heart of the series is maybe the question it's asking and responding to in lots of different ways.
Yeah, so I think that we touched on a lot of things that we have written down here. And the one other note that I wanted to make was that I definitely tried to like research what other people had said about this manga, because I was like, or like a series even. And I was like, I'm not going to limit it to the manga because there's, at least 3 different iterations of the story.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, there's so much like richness here. Like, surely there should be so many essays. And of course, I mean, the things that came up were like Anime Feminist articles wrten by you, or like the staff that were like
the shoujo gem that time forgot. Yeah. I'm not kidding.
yeah. So the 2 things that you guys, or that you all have written, are the one where it was like, you don't have to be like a big romantic love or like a combatant in shoujo to be really cool.
Yeah, I touched on Shurei in that one.
Yeah. And then the like really feminist shoujo, and I was like, okay. And then I just started trying to read like reviews of this, and the one that I ended up on, they were like, this is a josei because it doesn't focus on romance. And I was like, okay, what? You don't get to like...
How dare you? That's not how demographic labels work.
That's not how one. Exactly. I was like, I have there's so many layers to this comments that I have issues with, where it's like the demographic labels are just made up things by magazines. It ran into shoujo magazines as a shoujo.
Yeah, it was marketed at at girls,
young
therefore
girls.
Shoujo.
Therefore, that's all. I'm like, romance is a genre, shoujo is a demographic label.
Exactly.
Also, I'm just like, this thing where people like, they're like, I don't read shoujo. Shoujo is gross, so anything that I like must not be shoujo. I don't know if I can deal with it.
No, that is very frustrating. Yeah.
Like, you don't get to just do that. So, that's all I'm saying. This doesn't follow the normal, like, what you assume is a stereotypical shoujo arc, but is definitely a shoujo manga. Yay. End rant. Okay.
Hard agree.
Agree.
No notes.
Okay, so I don't think we need to do a full-blown shipping corner, but I do think that we need to touch on some key questions here. Like,
absolutely.
Do you like Shurei and Ryuki as a couple?
I do. I think they're cute.
Oh, yeah?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think I don't. If they were to get together in the manga where they are in their lives right now, I would be like, oh, you kind of rushed that. But I can see a future where they are together. I think they very clearly care about each other, maybe in different ways because Shurei has a lot of other stuff she's focused on right now. I think they balance each other out well. I think Ryuki I think Shurei can be, again, she's a little different with everybody. And especially those garden scenes with Ryuki. I think that I don't even know how to describe it. He brings out like this sort of relaxed gentleness in her that you don't necessarily see with other people, in that she's able to be very honest with him, but also like kind of let down her hair a little bit and open up to him about her own life. Like, she tells him about the stripped bare garden and her mom dying. And I mean, pretty early in the story. He in response, sort of tells her about his childhood, and she sort of has to reckon with the fact that, oh, I thought he was just this pampered little rich boy, but actually he's been through a lot too. So I think they balance each other out well. Again, I like that this is, if the end game of this story is that the two of them get together, which it would be surprising if it wasn't, but I truly don't know. I can see a future where the two of them are together, but I think they both have some growing in different ways to go before they get to that point. And so I like that the series doesn't rush it. And Shurei goes, I do care about you. I do love you. I don't think it's the same way you love me. And also, I got stuff to do. So I need to, and I can't do that. I can't be with you and do that. And so like that can't be our relationship right now. And he, being like, okay, yeah, I'll wait. Let me know if that changes, kind of thing. Yeah, I like them together. I think again, Ryuki is immature in some ways, but I think he's a sweet boy doing his best. And so I could, I like them together. So yeah, I ship it.
I actually think not only is she, all the garden scenes with him, she's very vulnerable, but she also, after that, even when he's more like overtly purposely being silly and like trying to gain her affections and everything, and she's more grumpy towards him, like she's not that way towards anybody else, right? So that's where I was like, because at first obviously it's like, okay, Ryuki and Shurei are supposed to be pretending to be a couple right now, but then after that I was like, okay, are more of these men going to be like vying for her affection? Like, again, when I didn't know so much, like in volume 3, I was like, I don't know, maybe. But then realizing that she only interacts with Ryuki in these like very particular ways, and everybody else, she has variations, but relatively is more like centered and everything. I was like, okay, no, only Ryuki.
It's very emotionally intimate, right? Like then they kiss a couple of times, mostly because Ryuki sort of steals him and Shurei's not quite sure how to feel about that. But like there's an intimacy where they can just, Ryuki even says like, no matter, how high you rise in the ranks and how our relationship changes publicly, like privately, please still call me Ryuki. Like, see me as a person, not as the emperor. And I like that about their relationship. I like that she gets grumpy about his like absolutely absurd gifts, but she also sort of appreciates them because she knows that he cares and he's trying. And she'll call him out, which Ryuki appreciates. Like, he intentionally didn't surround himself with yes men, right? Like, he picked Koyu and Shue Ran because he knew they would tell him if he was screwing up. So he, that's something he respects and admires about Shurei, which also makes him a great character and a good love interest. So Ryuki is a good boy.
Ryuki is a good boy.
That's my assessment there.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. Are there any of the other men who you'd be like, I would also like them to see if they could be with Shurei?
Probably not. Like, I think she and Koyu have kind of an interesting dynamic in terms of being like intellectual equals and following the same path and also being involved with the Hong clan's nonsense. But I really just see them as friends. I shouldn't say just. Friends are important. I really don't. I feel like Seiran is so much a brother figure to her that I can't. Also, he's like 10 years older than her, and at their current ages, that's a lot. So I can't really.
Yeah, he kind of like raised her in a way.
Yeah. So no, I don't really think. I mean, she and Ensei have kind of a fun relationship, but again, to me, it feels very brotherly. He's also quite a bit older than her. yeah, I don't really think there's anyone else who I'm like, oh yeah, I could see Shurei with them. I mean, I ship Shurei with the Proletariat Uprising. If that counts. If that counts as
a little
another
OTP here.
It's Ryuki or that.
Like anything less is not good enough here.
Yeah, and there are days when I almost feel like the series. Well, I guess we had a final question, like a final Twitter question about the ships too, didn't we? Or did I make that up?
Oh yeah, so at Suing Rose 11 on Twitter also asked, what would be your ideal ending for Shurei romance-wise? Would you prefer she end up single?
Yeah, that was the question, which made me
You're
think
like, yeah,
about
proletariat.
Well, it made me think about how I want the series to end, and so much of it is, again, despite taking place in this like imperial court system with, I mean, not a monarchy, but basically a monarchy, like it's hereditary, right? Like the bloodline continues kind of deal. So much of that is in contrast with the series' main themes about like individuality and freedom and like and working for the people, not just because it's like your God's given right, but because like that's your job, right? That's your duty.
Yeah, not in a way where like in America we've destroyed community. Like it's like, no, individualism in service of your community. No.
Yeah. And that element of responsibility to your constituents, I guess. So I to me, like, honestly, I think if I were writing the end of this series, we would eventually angle to a point where things had changed so much that the like imperial family was no longer needed. And it basically became like functionally a democracy or a republic. And then Ryuki and Shurei could be together because they don't have to worry about those class divides and like Shurei, being forced to be cloistered indoors forever, right? Like she doesn't want to be a member of the inner court. Like that's their big stopping point, is she can't do the things she wants to do as the empress because of the way the system currently works. So I think the system would have to change for the two of them to get together. And it would be surprising to me if the series ended with like, and then Ryuki got over her and married somebody else. The end.
Yeah, I also don't want her to be single. Like, even if it wasn't she married Ryuki, like I'm like, oh no, I don't want her to be alone.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and I mean, I think being single is perfectly fine, and Shurei does not seem particularly interested in a spouse or a boyfriend at this point in her life, which is cool.
Right. But I think she would want to have a family.
I think she genuinely cares for Ryuki, and I think there is a part of her that does like the idea of being with him, but again, it's just that it does not work. It's incompatible with everything else in their lives because of their positions and genders and whatever else. So my perfect ending is that they abolish the monarchy, and then they get together. So that's the ending I would like for Shurei. She becomes the president of Saiunkoku.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely the saddest ending is just like, oh, she gets to be the civil servant, but yeah, nothing really changes. So Ryuki just lords over the land forever and she dies alone. Like, no, that's terrible.
And I guess he also dies alone because he said he'd wait for her forever. So
yeah. So like,
no. I mean, I assume they'll keep meeting in the garden. So I mean, and that's the thing. They could just like have an unofficial relationship on the side.
It's true. I'm like, she could get a family if that's what she wanted.
Until Shurei gets to a point where she's like ready, to like maybe settle down a little bit more, and then they can talk about it. But until then, like, just keep smooching in the garden.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is my ship. Do you have any other ship? Obviously, Koyu / Ron.
Yeah,
very important.
I really do like Koyu and Ron, but I also was like, I would be intrigued to see Koyu like when that was proposed by the Hong clan. I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming, but I'm intrigued,
To me, it's one of those, it feels like the kind of political relationship that would work. It's not like they would be like over the moon in love with each other, but they would get along with each other and like
they would respect each other.
They would respect each other and forward each other's goals. So it would not be like a pulse-pounding romance, but like they would have a good relationship if that was what ended up happening in the story.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'd be fine with it.
Yeah. Shurei wouldn't though, because then she has to stay at home and she doesn't want to stay at home. So.
I mean, yeah, like this is the problem. That's why her just having a side relationship, with
Yeah, the emperor is her side piece.
Yes, yes. That's the conclusion we've reached here.
That's bragging rights right there.
Ideal ending. Emperor is side piece.
So romantic.
So romantic. Yes, I know. Oh, yay. Shoujo romance. All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts, or did we do it? We did the story of Saiunkoku.
Yeah, I think we covered the highlights. This was a very positive episode. I'm glad. It sounds like you really enjoyed it, which makes me very happy. Because when you said you'd never read it, I was like, oh no, what if she hates it? Oh no.
No. I mean, that definitely happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And even then I try to be like, I'm going to try to be nice because that's what I wanted this podcast to be.
Yeah. So I'm glad you had a good time with it. I'm glad it wasn't a slog. I thank you for inviting me on. It was really nice to be able to revisit the story and also talk about it, because I have a lot of thoughts about this series that I've never really been able to let out anywhere. So this was wonderful. Thank you for bringing me on to chat about this one.
Yes, I'm glad that you came on for it, because it's a really good series. Like, I'm like, oh, I could have been a better person if I read it like 10 years ago.
Man, that's how we should have ended the no spoiler section. Read this manga; it will change your life.
It will change your life. I know. Oh my gosh! Everything that you thought you understood, you'll see it so much more clearly, and you'll be like, oh my gosh!
I understand everything now.
I understand the world now. Yeah, I understand politics. I understand everything. Oh my goodness,
I understand assassin librarians, everything.
I know. Everything is clear to me now. Yeah, no, yep, that's it. Okay, well, everybody, thanks for listening to Shojo and Tell. Comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns. Need to gush about your OTP? Tell us your preferred ending for Shurei romance-wise. Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on the episode's YouTube page. We're at Shojo and Tell on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. D, where can people find you and your work on the internet?
They can find my work on my blog, the Josei Next Door. I do keep links to, most of my articles are on other websites at this point, but I do keep links to them there. And then you can also, again, hang out with me on Twitter at Josei Next Door. I'm in and out of Anime Feminist, writing reviews and recommendations and whatnot. So you should check out that site too, because we have lots of great contributors, and they work hard and they have really good thoughts. So check out Anime Feminist too while you're looking me up.
Yeah, they think hard and they write good.
A lot of marginalized progressive perspectives that you can't get anywhere else on the anime internet. So come check us out.
The anime internet is largely a disappointment to me. Hence, I made a podcast of my own, because I was like, this upsets me.
Yeah, you got to be the change you want to see in the world. I get it.
I know. Exactly. Are you excited every time you see a new episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts. This will help the show reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time for the first half of LoveCom, which I'll be discussing with my friend Loyola. I'm not joking this time. We're seriously finally gonna do LoveCom.
Oh, that'll be fun. Lovely Complex is a fun series.
I know. I'm like my friend is like, this is my favorite series ever. And I was like, cool, tell me more.
Oh, that'll be terrific.
Let me record your thoughts.
Have you read it before, or watched it before?
I have not. I'm very
okay.
bad.
No, that's good. It'll be another new experience for you. Manga's long, I think, so have fun.
I know. That's why we're only doing half of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, dive into it for sure.
Yes. Everybody stay tuned. Until then, bye.
Da 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 da.
Da, da.